Now it's time to move on to the next plenary session handled by Professor Anuna Magnus. He is a professor and educational administrator of policy in Abia State University, Nigeria since 2011. He earned his doctorate from the Abia State University. He holds master's degree of education in history and education and bachelor of arts from the University of Port Harcourt and University of Nigeria. Anna Magnus has been the editor-in-chief of African International Journal of Educational Administration and Policy and editor of Journal of Educational Management, Abia State University, and serves as the executive editor of Abia State Journals of Educational Studies. He was also appointed member of the editorial advisor board and African Studies Review journal published by the Center of Africa and American African Studies, Southern Universities of New Orleans, and etc. He has been a visiting professor of educational administration at his area of academic research interest centers on educational leadership, educational policy analysis and law. Current research interest of assessing the link between the social justice, equity, and effective school improvement. He has been an external examiner of master's and doctorate degree candidates at the University of Port Harcourt, Rivers State. He has edited and co-edited, authored and co-authored 15 books, published 25 journal articles and 20 book chapters. Currently, he is the director of Center of Primary and Non-Formal Education at Abia State University. Recently, he was appointed member of Journal of Ethical Educational Leadership, USA. During the coronavirus period, 2020, he attended online conferences and presented a research paper titled Leadership Styles, Organizational Climate and Social Culture on Academic Performance of the Student in Private Secondary Schools, an international conference on future education 2020. And he is a Nigerian Associate Educational Administration and a planning and fellow Gender Studies Association of Nigeria. I feel very privileged in welcoming you, sir, and you can take over. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Good morning, ma, and audience. I'm privileged to present a paper, Equipping the School Principal for Greater Productivity in Nigerian Secondary Schools. And we know very well about the implications of the role of the principals in educational development, in enhancing school improvement, school effectiveness. And we know that very well that principals are supposed to be instructional leaders of the school. They have responsibility of managing secondary schools. And secondary school is the bridge between the primary schools and the universities. Very vital for nation building, nation integration, and national development. And also, we all know very well that the authorities' power given to principals in Nigeria have been whittled down. During the colonial era, they were highly empowered. During the post-colonial era, from 1950 to 60 to 80, they were given enormous powers for managing school budgets and recruiting teachers and selecting them. In short, what was in vogue in those days, up to the 80s, they were allowed to recruit teachers and then merely inform the board that these social teachers with vital skill in physics, chemistry are necessary to enable us to run the school effectively. They also control the school board. They were also allowed to keep impress account of the money collected as school fees. Now, the whole system was highly democratic and the whole thing has changed. Now the system has become highly bureaucratized, legalized so much that the principals are helpless. And this has dwindled productivity. Now, we know that equipping them has become imperative, unlike what happens in more developed nations of the world. If you look at America, there's a process of certification of teachers, and it's only when somebody has been satisfied, went through a rigorous selection process, that the person will be asked to become a principal, manage schools. That was, if you look at the work of Peter Dale and Princeton, they will emphasize that the principals are instructional leaders. They are committed to the core values of the school. They maintain and enhance positive school culture, and they interact with the community, and they're also supposed to be financial managers. Because of these important roles given to them in a dynamic society that is changing, it also need to be equipped in order to cope up with the changes. And it is the principal that also manage the teachers to enhance productivity of the teachers. The principals need to have a fair knowledge of artificial emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, they have a thin grip of knowledge management and emotional intelligence, which is also linked to productivity and school improvement. Now, for a principal to be just effective, not efficient, equipping him with vital skills have become necessary. And the characteristics of effective teachers are keeping the interest of the student, of effective teachers are keeping the interest of the student at heart, avid learner, art ethical, he's a social leader of the school. And not only that, also, he builds relationship between the community and entire schools. Now, a principal should be a lifelong learning. If you look at the world globally now, the emphasis has shifted from education as a right, but now lifelong learning as a ways of life. So principals are very important to implement these rules and the regulation. And now, in a developed nations like United States of America, recruitment of teachers are even uneven, spotty, and poorly organized sometimes. And because the principals are supposed to be in link with the realities of life, and they must also ensure that quality education are put in place. That was in certain places in America, like Washington, D.C., they have centers for educational leadership, where there is a meeting between the university community, researchers, and the principals in the school, where they exchange ideas. Immediately the research findings are available, it is left to the principals to implement them. So you can now see that in the age where we are moving now, we are now living in the age of robotics, which are replacing routine jobs and simple demanding tasks. So the principles are necessary to impart these vital skills and usher in qualitative education. There is no way the principal can usher in qualitative education, prepare students to enter into the age of robots and machines, where there are less demand for jobs, and without being re-equipped. Now, coming to think of that now, if you look at the world globally now, we have unemployment epidemic, especially in my own country, Nigeria. So the principals are the link between the primary schools and the secondary schools that need to churn on the manpower that are relevant to the global economy and the changing world. The world we are living now is changing. And these principals need to be equipped with vital skills that enable them to perform these tasks, demanding tasks. Now, let me quote an example. International Institute of Educational Planning emphasize that principals face urgent challenges of prosperity, security, immigration, health, and others. The commission projected that by 2030, over 80 million people will risk not to gain basic skills, and 1.5 million adults will just primary education. If the world did not act by 2015, the number of lives lost to the low level of education will equal those of HIV, AIDS, and malaria. That means without equipping principals in order to act their duties as instructional leaders, there are certain crucial problems that will result. That means it will be more deadly than the pandemic we're experiencing now in the world. Now, if you look at this world globally now, 40% of people are finding it very difficult to, employers are finding it difficult to recruit people for jobs because they don't have the vital skill needed. And if there's gaps between the employer and employee skills possessed, it will result in stunted global economy. The global economy will be stunted. And most countries in the world, like Nigeria and other developing nations, they spend 15% of their budget on education, while advanced nations spend up to 50%. Education is the key to dynamic economy. It's the key that will restore in or bring in skills, vital skills that are needed for economic development. This is being exemplified by countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, the Asian tigers, Indonesia. They don't have much material resources, but they have skills. They even export skills, knowledge skills, because we are living in a knowledge economy. Now, how do we equip the teachers who will later become principals in order to face the task of managing schools effectively? We can achieve, every country can achieve by equipping principals through decentralization of powers. Most of the powers have become highly bureaucratic, being managed by education administrators at the board, at education commissions. But we need now to have what require a devolution of power to the principals. That means replacing bureaucratic regulations with a professional responsibility of the principals. And this could easily be achieved through lifting bureaucratic obstacles, rules and the regulations, and then allowing the principal to share the authority powers with parents, stakeholders, groups, pupils, and the community. That means principals will be re-equipped by having adequate knowledge of site management. Now, site management means an intense principals involved effectively in management of institutions, where the world have to move off bureaucratic principles of management and rather imbibe the principle of democratic management, where every stakeholders are allowed to participate in the management of the schools, like what was happening in the 60s and the 70s in Nigeria and other countries. Even United States of America used conventional training to equip principals with skills. What did they use? Coaching, mentoring, and some states are also engaged in mentoring the teachers, working with experts instead of conventional ad hoc training, in-service training that are sporadic in nature. So for principals to develop effectively, hinge their performance on networking, and these sponsored networks are maintained by the state governments and institutions, like what happened in California and Vermont. In England, also, the devolution of power now and autonomy to the principals. Most of the resources, decision makings are managed by the principals in the school, in this organization. In return to the power given to the principal, the principal, they must adhere to the national curriculum and ensure academic achievement of students. Now, the appointment and selection of principals should also hinge on the appointment of teachers, and selection of principals should hinge on the teachers. They should be allowed to play a vital role of who will be employed, who will be assessed, who will be promoted, and monitor the academic work that has been undertaken in the school on a daily basis. By monitoring this academic road, one important thing will be achieved. That is, it will usher in positive school culture, core values, vision of the school, and positive climate. And this positive climate that the teachers and the principals and teachers are supposed to acquire through their retraining will enable them to enhance effective school improvement. It is obvious now that in our own world that the principal have an enormous task as instructional leaders. Therefore, the government should be involved in implementation and monitoring of the training and the training of principals. And because the principals are now being given more responsibilities, there are people responsible for ensuring that physical facilities are being maintained, financial management of the school, budgetary allocation are being managed. So in order to cope with this enormous task of managing school on a daily basis, they must be retrained and re-equipped. Now, professional training of teachers is hinged on school improvement. And school improvement is also being effective because of the roles played by the principal as instructional leaders. That means principals are supposed to be change agents, not a means of maintaining the status quo. The principal supposed to be the means of making available quality educations in times of reforms and changes. If you look at the world we are living in now, we are living in the age of artificial intelligence, emotional intelligence, age of robots. To implement these changes effectively in our secondary schools, the principal need to be re-equipped because of their rules. Now, the day-to-day business of managing schools should be entrusted to the principals, not bureaucrats in the offices who doesn't know much about reforms and the innovation. Because why these things are important? Because we are living in the age of privatization of schools, management of schools, private sector involvement in the funding of school. So in order to do these things effectively, the principals must be equipped to enhance productivity. Qualitative educations cannot be achieved if the training of the principals are stagnant. They should be prepared for this enormous task of managing schools effectively in this 21st century. And in countries like France, Germany, Singapore, Hong Kong, Cyprus, South Africa, the professional training of teachers is highly centralized and supply driven. That means what we mean by supply driven means the needs of society, the needs of the community, the needs of the student are being taken into consideration in appointment of a principal, because there are people responsible for monitoring the quality assurance on daily basis. Now, United States of America, licensing of principals is a very vital aspect of the job for more than 200 years. You cannot be a principal in the United States of America, even in Australia and Canada, without having a professional diploma in educational leadership. These are very important. Even Britain and Australia have already established leadership training institutes. They are responsible for training higher school teachers, their induction, and monitoring their professional qualification. All these changes are meant to provide them for headship of schools. Now, the training of principals in our school should pass through a rigorous and complex process. The essence of this induction is to enable them to acquire new skills on the job training, professional career development, where they are both to practical aspect of managing schools and through elaborate offering support from professional association of schools like ANCOPS in Nigeria, National Association of Principals. They also help in professional training of principals. In South Africa, for example, no principal is eligible, no teacher is eligible to be a principal unless you have a professional certificate in educational leadership. This country, Australia, America, Britain, have recognized the importance of principals training in ushering in school improvement and school effectiveness. This group of people need to hone up their skills and competence in managing schools. Even in Solomon Island in the Southern Pacific, school principals must have a professional diploma in educational leadership before they are being assigned such positions. And coming to think of that, even within Africa, Namibia, South Africa, stress this provision of managing schools, in enhancing knowledge of principals, in problem-solving skills, and also the needs of the principals will be assessed in order to enable them perform their duties effectively. Remember very well that the principals are necessary for turning schools into professional learning organizations. So their professional learning community that we ushered in are necessary in order to enhance teaching and learning process. The principals must be reflective in their attitude towards work, because they are responsible for ensuring core values, vision of the school, instruction of parents, and collaboration with other teachers. So in order to ensure these people, to ensure these attitudes are being achieved, this school improvement are being achieved, only talented and value-driven teachers should be employed as principals after they have obtained a professional diploma in educational leadership. They should be rewarded for their contribution to the growth of society, for their sensitive roles, and also this will ensure their retention. Because if they are not rewarded, if there are no intrinsic motivation after their training, they may easily leave it for other greener pastures. Because even in ancient Rome, let's look at the historical perspective. Ancient Rome, what sustained the Roman empires was their educational system. And what sustained the educational system were the principals and the teachers. They were cherished. They were valued for their skills, for their knowledge. And they were even given and made to become Roman citizens, which is almost as highly as somebody being given American green card today. Hence, teachers' qualification is a prerequisite for enhancing learning outcomes. We need to equip them effectively in order for them to enhance productivity by retraining them not on an ad hoc basis, but making them to acquire skills on a continuous basis, be it lifelong learners. It's only when the principal has acquired the attitude and had learning as a core value that can now transmit it to the teachers, and the teachers can now transmit it to the students. For example, in Nigeria, we have something like professional diploma in educational leadership. They're not only like licensing teachers to become principals. Principals are obtained through means. In state schools owned by state governments, they become principals after serving for many years as vice principals, or after serving many years as a classroom teacher, 20 years or 30 years. And also in federal colleges of education, principals are appointed from the cadre of directors of school. Although directors of school have become sometimes classroom teachers, the equivalent of principals. So in order to achieve some of these things, it's necessary for aspirants, teachers to be selected from the rank of vice principal who have professional training in educational leadership, how to manage resources, because we are living in the time of lean budgets, how to manage non-existing resources, how to maintain school facilities and plans. You can now see that principals are not just coordinator of schools, but they function as financial managers, they function as public relation officer, maintaining the close link between the school and the community. They also function as image makers. They also function as a link between the primary schools and the universities. Now, what are the measures that should be taken to equip these principals. For them to function very well, it's necessary to have a postgraduate diploma in educational leadership. This enhance school improvement. Not only school improvement, but with all the methods as instructional leaders, effective instructional leaders. We are living in the era of accountability, where schools are resource-oriented. Parents want results for knowledge. Government want results for the money spent in managing schools. Thereby, professional training of principals have become imperative and inevitable. Now, when you come to think of that, head teachers now, principal, also have the demanding job of maintaining school, running them smoothly, without being effective instructional leaders by equipping them with new skills. Academic performance will slump down. So the principal need to be equipped with new innovative ideas, being creative, and building effective school community relations to manage knowledge and change. To manage knowledge and change by the school principals, they need professional training, because it is them that will ensure the success of the professional learning community. And by this virtual equipping them, they will see change, innovation, creativity as a potential source of growth for the school. In more developed nations like Britain, United States of America, India, Canada, France, appointment of principals is hinged on the position of a professional postgraduate diploma in educational leadership. This professional is above have a master's degree in educational administration. It's a specific skill, practical skill that the person needs to manage school on daily basis. Countries in Africa, like South Africa, in Namibia, has made it compulsory that a potential principal must have a diploma in educational leadership. Even tiny Solomonic Island in the Pacific have already done that. They have joined the queue. An integral aspect of educational leadership is financial management, because of the dwindling resources of every nation. These have been the trend in Britain, United States of America, Australia, New Zealand, and even India. In India now, there was a time we were reading that they had a national university of educational administration. That means what it is studies at a discipline in Nigeria and so many other countries becomes a full-fledged university in India, because the country has also realized the importance of teachers as changing agents, sustaining innovation and creativity in the schools that will enhance dynamic economy and enable it to participate in the global world economy. However, in Nigeria, appointment to the position of a principal is based on the number of years somebody has spent as a teacher or being a vice principal or a classroom teacher. This trend is also applicable to Cameroon. There's need for Nigeria and Cameroon and some other African countries in West Africa to follow the global trend of appointing teachers with postgraduate diploma in educational leadership as school heads, appointing them as school heads. For example, at Harvard University, their College of Education runs a program online on educational leadership, which is very important. It's very easy to implement some of these changes in any country. People who have PhD or master's degree in education can act as resource persons. And after acting as a resource person, through mentoring program and coaching, other people will acquire those vital skills. Because without them being trained for that positions as heads of schools, experience may not be the only vital attitude or vital criteria, but how relevant are the skills to the needs of this society? Now look at it. In a research on development for Nigerian head teachers, these following things were developed for the training needs of managing school finance, effective leadership in schools, managing disciplinary problem, securing community schools for school, motivating teachers for greater productivity, and enhancing the role of PTA, Parental Association, in school management. These things cannot be achieved without re-equipping principals for greater productivity. And they must be able to maintain these things by building team commitment and collaboration. Part of the training of the principals is that they should know how to operate as a team. Collaborative teaching, collaborative learning, building a team commitment is important aspect of the skill the principal have to grip, because no country or no educational system can survive in isolation of the headship and the teachers. Now, countries like Britain and America have learned on licensing of teachers before they become school leaders. Kenya, as a country, had a modified version of apprenticeship model appointing principal, where they will stay, work under a principal for so many years, where they mentor and coach before they assume position as principals. In Australia, a teacher had to spend 15 years in the classroom before becoming a principal. So this importance of equipping principals to become effective leaders will not be hinged only on creativity, but also it will also usher in the effective schools. That is why, according to Avidis 22, effective schools are institutions that make difference in student learning and school improvement, having high expectations for students, which are easily communicated to the school. It is only the principal with this elaborate training who is a dynamic principal, a game changer, who is ready to accept new ideas, involved in knowledge economy, involved in lifelong learning, will be able to enhance school improvement. In conclusion, much resources should be devoted to the professional training of teachers to enable them to implement the curriculum effectively and also to retain them. Retention is very important. They cannot enhance learning outcomes if there's no retention. And there will not be any much improvement in skills if they cannot control budgets, if they cannot have managerial skills. It's necessary to equip principals through their preparation, through their succession as principals. To enable them achieve these goals, the principal will now focus on the needs of the society, on the needs of the community, on the needs of the nation, sharing his visionary skills with teachers in order to enhance teaching and learning outcomes. So it is also necessary to grant greater autonomy to the principals, grant greater autonomy to them to participate in terms of management of funds. Principals should be involved in collecting interest accounts and keeping part of it. Like in Nigeria, they don't have control over any finance. Everything being paid in a bureaucratic account, where they find it very difficult to access those funds when they are needed desperately. So for my country and other nations in Africa to move forward, they need to adopt models of development of principals in order to enter into the global economy and export human labor and resources to other countries. Thank you. I'll finish this lecture. Thank you, ma. I want to thank the organization. Thank you. I want to thank the organization for giving me opportunity to present and share this knowledge. I have, ma. Dinne bia. Dinne bia na ma me ho kwchila. Ele kwani he gare ya.
I was working on
Yen ke ga ka ima he ne ole he ma ke he mba.
Chokam the road there.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. We are proud of your
I know you.
presentation.
I hear you speak.
Hello, sir. We are proud
Yes,
of your
I'll
presentation, and we are really happy to have you present your thoughts in a beautiful manner towards the post-colonial literatures that are flown into the areas of African region and the migrated region. Now it's time to the audience and spectators who have some questions to contribute, or your views and sharings you can share with the presenter to enrich the conference.
Sir, good evening. How are you?
So kindly hold. We are waiting for the viewers to ask questions.
Yes, you ask questions.
Yep.
I'm ready to answer questions. Ask, please.
So we have a question to be raised to you.
Okay.
Shall I?
Yes, ask question, please.
So from the African breed, from the African, what do you call, the generation, your contribution to post-colonial literature was enriching. And the question they have asked is, how is the educational system of the African region support post-colonial studies?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the system of education supposed to post-colonial studies, the African nation need to move away from their post-colonial past of education and then hooks into a system that's unique to them. Unique to them in the sense that they look at what's relevant to their own peculiar needs, to their own environment, that will solve their own problem, not necessarily imitating the developed nations. If you look very well, we don't share the same problems, the same terrain with them. Our educational system in Africa and post-colonial should now be able to look at the specific problems of the society and solve them. They may not invest in big 10 technology, but invest in simple technology that will provide food, adequate food, and also curb the need of having dropout children. That is post-colonial. During now post-colonial, most African countries, due to excess wars, insurgency, religion, ignorance, there's a lot of conflict in Africa, and this problem should be solved through our educational policy. When people are ignorant, when they are not informed, there is always conflict. Like in Nigeria now at the moment, we have up to, due to insurgency, we have up to 30 children that are out of school. This constitutes a potential threat to the nationhood. But not many people are already investigating that as a very big threat. But when people have reached a level of enlightenment and development through education, their thinking pattern changes. What causes most conflict in Africa are post-colonial, wrong educational policies. Let me give you an example now. In Nigeria now, or see the war that's raging in Ethiopia. It's based on religion, ethnic affiliation. But in more developed nations, they have passed through this stage. Like in America, everybody is a nation of image. Everybody is a founder. A nation that wants to be effective should be built on three poles: equity, justice, social justice, fairness for every citizens. Not based on religious affiliation, not based on tribal affiliation. And how do we achieve this? When the membership, when the bulk of the population are highly enlightened, when they have basic education. Like now, if you look at globally now, UNESCO later, United Nations said now they have moved, International Institute of Educational Planning has said we have moved from lifelong, they have now moved to lifelong education for everybody. Not less a right to education, but we are still have not been able to accomplish right to education. So this post-colonial implications that when people have an awareness of the right through basic knowledge, they even surpass the developed nations, where religions that have been hyper as agent of destruction will be played down, where ethnic affiliations will be regarded as nothing, where people should be based on everything based on social justice, equity, fairness. You can now see the divisions left by this country we are colonized is still haunting us. But have a right and a pray to say no or not. The only way we can achieve it is by massification of education, making it easily accessible to everybody in every nation in the world. I hope I've answered your question. I'm ready to answer more questions. Hello?
Hello, sir. It was a good explanation for the question. Maybe there is another question raised from the department.
Okay.
Shall I ask that?
Ask, please, ask.
You have stressed your educational policies and educational interest on non-formal education. And are there studies on non-formal education in Nigerian region or African region? Is there any special scholar or any great thinkers who contribute a lot for the post-colonial learning from non-formal style of education? So,
yes, this is a very vital and interesting question. Why we are having problems today in Nigeria and many African countries is the neglect of our indigenous traditional education. If we are able to develop it or integrate it into our school system, the story would have been different. In African society, in Nigerian society, for example, that indigenous education have been neglected, African education, where people obtain skills, knowledge, where there was no unemployment, everybody was gainfully employed, everybody had one occupation or another. That is vocationalization of our educational system that have been neglected. And this is started with the advent of the white men. You see, a country must tailor its educational policy to suit the needs of society, their environment, their terrain. And any neglect of it will be economic doom for the nation. Now, let me give you an example. When Nigeria was colonized by the British people, now, we neglected industrial education, vocational education, technical education. People were only trained in learning how to read and write and be clerks in government by a certain establishment. This aspect of schools withered away. Up to today, Nigeria don't have, most African countries don't have highly skilled manpower, middle level manpower to sustain the economy. Because they still cling to that old pattern of colonial education that was introduced. Not thinking that Britain was the first country that became industrialized in the whole world. And the manpower, the skill needed to sustain British economy was not developed in the universities. It was developed in the industries, where people as apprenticeship, obtain such vital skills that have sustained British industries. Later, they established red brick universities, technical universities. But today, in Nigeria, we look at people who attended technical school with disdain and contempt. The government, they don't allow them to accept funds. They don't sponsor them. They don't give them what it takes. Everybody still goes to that reading and writing that is make people to be unemployable. So we are still suffering from diploma disease. Why the nations, all of them have moved forward. For example, now in Nigeria, we still operate OND, HND, dichotomy within the degree holders. No country does that anymore. Even Britain had established technical universities that award degrees. America, right from the world go, there was no dichotomy. Now, if you look at America today, they have MIT, Master Acquisition Institute of Technology, that award degrees up to PhD. They are technological universities. They don't have all this dichotomy that is hindering educational development, that's hindering the production of high-level manpower. What they did was establish technical universities right from the world go. What they got, land grant universities in America. In Britain, they call them technical universities that enable to have people who have academic knowledge combined with practical skills and training. That's what sustains the economy. But today, most developed nations, they still need to import skilled labor from China, Indonesia, Singapore to sustain the economy because of the lack of vision of what the educational system should be all about. And if you look at it, this is also hinged on the trend of the teachers. People need to move away from the past of the colonial era and look at the post-colonial era. Look at what's happening in international educational system. Emulate them, imbibe those ideas, and then modify and suit them to suit your own peculiar environment. Why the whole world widening the gap? Country, we are closing the gap. High school fees, high standards that are not in the systems, not empowering parents and people to obtain education like India has already picked up. And so countries like South Africa too. Operator Biango so. Any further question?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah. You have visited different countries, and you stress on the educational formation, or what do you call that, formal and non-formal style of learning. And is there any, African ambience, African opportunity to present it to the world that what you have is from the folk culture of Nigerian migration? There is a vast thought about migration, and especially people who migrate from Nigeria of various internal issues, whether it is religious issue or cultural issue or environmental issue, whatever it be. But how do you, communicate the culture of, the people of the migration who migrate themselves from one place to the other? Is there any possibility of learning the migration literature of Nigeria? Is there any step taken by the post-colonial writers, sir?
Okay. What actually happened in this situation of migration of people is the nature of the society. If you look, there was a time in India, people were migrating to America, Silicon Valley. to work there. But later they came back to their country because the country created an enabling environment to sustain them. They become nationalists. But our own is that there's influence of people from different parts of Africa to developed nations. And these people that are migrating every day are highly skilled labor. Highly skilled labor that are migrating every day. It's almost becoming a hemorrhage of skills. Where doctors, engineers that are necessary for economic development are migrating. It's migration. And not only that, even in literature, post-colonial literature of our, we need to move away from the past and establish our own identity. Unless we have visionary leaders who are transformational, strategic leaders who will see the need to keep these people in their own country, stabilize their currency of the nation, fight corruption, people will come back. Nobody likes to stay in another man's room. And literature also has to play a very vital role in this by projecting that these places you live are not your home. There are certain rights you're entitled to, which they will deny to you one day or another. Even when you think you're a part of them, you are not. So when writers started writing short books and people started reading them, practicing them, even in the nursery schools, it becomes a way of life. And when it becomes a way of life, the adjustment will now become easier. Everything, what I say, depends on a leader. If you look at, even in ancient Rome, learning was regarded as the ultimate. That was why those Greek slaves who were teaching them, they were being paid, they were well looked after. They were given rewards. But in our own setup, people are frustrated. We have a lot of out-of-school children. It's just as of now in Nigeria, they have now reached up to 30 million children that are out of school within a very rich country. And this will embody a lot of conflict in the future. Serious ones. But when somebody is enlightened, he has a tolerant views of religion. He will not engage or fight or kill others. Saudi Arabia, let me give you an example of Muslims. Saudi Arabia is the home of Muhammad and every other thing. They are the custodians of Islamic religion. Well, they don't kill people. They don't fight. They don't destroy everything the way the ISIS and the Taliban are doing. In life, you cannot whip other than the bereaved. These are the essence of what somebody has to gain through knowledge, through reading. You become highly enlightened, highly philosophic. You have an insight that can move the nation forward. So our literature, we need to change our world, our countries. Thank you, sir. I'm available for further questions.
So there are two more questions. Shall I ask them?
Okay, please go ahead and ask them.
Yeah, two more questions. So one is about through the migration, number of children are affected. Through the migration, number of children are affected. What step has the education system of Africa? What step has the education system of Africa support children to learn literature? So,
okay. When people migrate, they become a part of foreign culture. And that is an aspect of neocolonialism. To me, that's what I feel like. So now, and a country without knowledge of literature cannot have knowledge of their past. And when they don't have knowledge of their past through literature, through reading, they are due for extinction. So in Africa now, we need to encourage a lot of writers to be producing books that will be exposing the evil, the shortcomings of migration to other nations, and also exposing our leaders who are also creating a favorable environment for migration to other countries. People who migrate, if you look at most developed nations, they create a very wonderful enable environment that causes the best of every world to migrate to their own. If America needs doctors, they create an enable environment. They migrate from India, migrate from Africa to develop their own economy. Why the other economy where they come from are lying fallow. What we need to do is to have a visionary leaders who will be who encourage people through reading, making these literatures available, encouraging writers. For example, now in Nigeria now, we have a poor reading culture due to how expensive books are, due to people cannot easily access internet, they are so expensive, due to poor numeration of the teachers. So people are looking for greener pastures. They are living in droves in the nation. In short, one day I visited the American embassy to have a visa to attend the conference in America. We saw lines of people. These are professionals, these are skills, these are younger men who will sustain the economy. So what we need, the literature now we need in Africa is to attack the leaders, expose the evils of what they are doing to the nation, that when this infinium will start, it will consume everybody, including themselves. So that and the only thing they can do is to make literature to be easily available to people. And it's not easy due to the exchange rate now. People cannot buy books. Due to poverty, people don't have the time to reset their mind, to read and acquire knowledge. It's a problem in Africa, and that's why we have so many conflicts. Look at the areas of Africa that are in conflict. Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and so on and so forth. These things, these insurgencies, these religious conflicts are linked to two aspects. One, poverty of ideas. Two, physical poverty. Three, lack of adequate knowledge. Because their leaders don't have the political will to make education accessible to every individual. That they made them to be more tolerant, more accommodating, and enhance nation building and national integration. That's very important. You need to acquire this in through literature that have a lot of political connotation, exposing the evils and the ills of migration to other countries. I'm trying to let people to know the implications of that for the ruling class, who are self-centered and selfish. They only think of themselves. But whenever there's a conflict in the nation, it involves everybody. Everybody goes down. That's why it needs to avoid it. And how do you avoid this thing? By extensive knowledge, by reading. No nation can develop without allowing everybody to acquire basic education up to secondary school level, what Americans call at higher school. And making that education to be qualitative, not just quantitative. Qualitative education, qualitative and relevant education is a key. And this thing could be that is through also through our literature that have been made available. So this nation needs to bring a group of writers in literature, English language, who will be writing out these novels, even as a sort of cartoon, play. People acquire those principles. It becomes a part of them. So this is my own humble explanation, sir. Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Uh,
The last question. Shall I ask and then we
Okay.
can wind? Yeah.
Please
The last
ask, please.
question is, yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
What is the contribution of female writers, female writers for the
Uh-huh.
betterment, female writers for the
Mm-hmm.
betterment of feminism, for
Please
the
come,
contribution of feminism? Yeah,
come back again.
feminism.
Come again. Okay.
Yeah. What is the contribution of female
Mm-hmm.
writers for
Uh-huh.
feminism? Feminism.
Mm-hmm. On feminism. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
On feminism. Okay. In Nigeria and Africa, a lot of them has completed feminism. But like Chindia, he did a lot of work, and in the past, Laurent Wapa and Buchi Emecheta about the way women are being stigmatized because they don't have children, or in families that are not a part of the inheritance system. But now, due to the awareness created by most of these current female writers now and the success they are in life, people have seen the need now to train their male, not only their male children, but their female children. And also, they make it possible, they create an awareness for people to make their female children to have an inheritance in their family properties. And also encourage, through their writer, they also encourage a lot of people to try to excel in their careers. So they are making a very wonderful and positive contribution. Feminism is not, to in most contexts, to me, it's not a part of equating man with a woman. No, it's not the same thing. But being given them certain rights that made them to feel like human being. Like this form of this writer of feminism is that when a man dies, the widow is being maltreated. Sometimes the man's brothers will drive it out and seize all their brother's property. They won't allow them to inherit their husband's wealth. So, but now with this feminism, they create an awareness that this woman who helped this man to create this wealth should be in control of everything. And they have also set legal teams that sit women who are being oppressed or who are being marginalized. So they are doing a very wonderful work through their literature. And this has increased since after independence. There developed a lot of awareness of their rights through what obtains other developed nations, where men are supposed to be treated as equals. And they say that certain occupations that are men only exclusive for men, women are now big managers in it. They now can become vice chancellors. They can now become even head of administration, head of service, everything. This is what the female writers have accomplished for the nation through their literature over the years. They change people's attitude positively through women and recognize their achievements, their accomplishments. So I'm finished, sir.
Alastair, thank you very much for the valuable time you spent with us.
Thank you, sir.
You have really pictured the African culture, and based on your studies and research, you enlightened the reviewers and the viewers. A number of comments were passed on about your presentation. We will pass them to you. A wonderful presentation, sir. And we wish you all the best for the future career to guide number of students and to work for the African upliftment of post-colonial literature. On behalf of Cape Comorin, Lavender Literary Club, and ITDT, in collaboration with Anai Velangani College, Tolavatam, Kanyakumari, Tamil Nadu, South India. Thank you so much. We value your presentation. So, thank you.
Thank you.